The hum of the engine was my only companion, a constant, droning lullaby that vibrated through the solace of my boots and deep into my bones. I'd been on I-80 since before dawn, chewing up the monotonous, flat stretches of Indiana. The sky was a sheet of featureless gray, the kind that promises neither rain nor sun, just an eternal, muted twilight. My rig, a classic Freightliner with over 1,000,000 miles on her, purred along without complaint, a testament to the meticulous care I gave her. She was my home, my office, my sanctuary from a world that moved too fast for most. This run was a simple one. A straight shot from Jersey to Denver, hauling a trailer full of consumer goods that nobody would think twice about. Tires, plastic furniture, boxes of something or other. The cargo was irrelevant. It was the miles that mattered. The rhythm of the road was a kind of therapy. Shift, accelerate, check the mirrors, watch the white lines hypnotize you into a state of calm alertness. It was a life of solitude, but never one of loneliness. There's a difference. The solitude was chosen, a peace earned by enduring the chaos of loading docks and four-wheelers cutting you off. My goal for the day was simple. Make it to a familiar truck stop just outside of Mansfield, Ohio. It was one of the good ones: clean showers, decent coffee, and a diner that served a patty melt that could make you weep with joy. It was a landmark, a waypoint in the vast, interconnected network of asphalt that we, the knights of the highway, navigated. I watched the mile markers tick down, my body already anticipating the feel of stepping out of the cab, of stretching my back and feeling the cool air on my face. The landscape began to soften, the brutal flatness giving way to gentle, rolling hills dotted with skeletal trees waiting for spring. Winter was clinging on with a bitter tenacity, and a sharp wind whipped across the highway, buffeting the rig. I tightened my grip on the wheel, a subconscious reaction to the invisible hand trying to push me into the next lane. This was the part of the job they didn't tell you about: the constant, physical battle against the elements, the fatigue that settled deep into your muscles. I flicked on the CB radio, the channel bursting to life with the static-laced chatter of other drivers. There was talk of a way station ahead, a slowdown near Akron, the usual complaints about fuel prices. It was the sound of a community, a tribe connected by airwaves and shared experience. I listened but didn't chime in. I was a listener, not a talker. You learn more that way. You hear the stories, the warnings, the little pieces of lives being lived out in these metal boxes. Finally, the exit sign for the Mansfield stop appeared, a beacon of salvation. I signaled, downshifted, and guided the big rig off the highway and onto the access road. The truck stop sprawled before me, a familiar oasis of concrete, neon, and the constant rumble of diesel engines. I found a spot at the far end, away from the main bustle of the fuel islands, preferring the quiet periphery. The act of shutting down the engine was always a profound silence, the sudden absence of noise as deafening as the roar had been. I sat for a long moment in the sudden quiet, letting my senses readjust. The cab still vibrated with phantom energy. I rubbed my eyes, gritty with lack of sleep, and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The face that stared back was weathered, lined with the passage of countless miles and too many cups of bad coffee. A 2-day stubble peppered with gray covered my jaw. It was the face of a man who had seen a lot of road and not enough home. With a grunt, I popped the door open and climbed down, my joints protesting the movement. The cold Ohio air hit me like a physical slap, clean and sharp, scented with diesel exhaust and damp earth. It was invigorating. I stretched, my hands on the small of my back, arching until I heard a satisfying pop. The plan was simple: a hot shower, that patty melt, and maybe a piece of pie if I was feeling wild. Then, a few hours of shut-eye in the bunk before pushing on through the night. It was a good plan, a solid plan. A plan that didn't account for the past, or for the things that where the faces of men dot. As I started the long walk towards the bright lights of the main building, I scanned the other rigs parked around me. It was a habit, looking for familiar logos, interesting paint jobs. My gaze swept over a row of Peterbilts and Kenworths, and then stopped. My breath caught in my throat. There, 3 spots over, was a truck I hadn't seen in years, but one I could never forget. It was an old, impeccably maintained International, a deep forest green with a single silver stripe down the side. And leaning against the driver's side door, sipping from a thermos, was a man I hadn't seen since a run down in Laredo, what felt like a lifetime ago. It was John. John, the name echoed in my mind, pulling up a flood of memories drenched in Texas heat and the smell of border town dust. We'd met years ago, both of us young and dumb, trying to prove we could handle the big leagues. We'd ended up on the same convoy hauling auto parts down to Mexico, and for 2 weeks, we were inseparable, a duo against the world. He was a character, full of loud stories and a laugh that could fill a room, or a cab. He'd saved my bacon once, spotting a loose tie-down on my trailer that I'd missed, a mistake that could have been catastrophic. And then, after that run, we just drifted apart, as people do on the road. Different companies, different schedules. The road giveth, and the road taketh away. I'd thought about him from time to time, wondering if he was still out here, grinding out the miles. And now, here he was, looking almost exactly the same. A little thicker around the middle, maybe a few more lines on his face, but it was undeniably him. The same shock of unruly red hair, the same way he stood, with a slight tilt to his hips as if ready for a joke. I stood frozen for a second, a smile breaking out on my own tired face. This was a rare pleasure, a genuine connection in a sea of transient nods and CB handles. I changed course, my footsteps crunching on the gravel as I approached him. He was looking down at his phone, his brow furrowed, and didn't see me coming. "Well, I'll be damned," I said, my voice rough from disuse. "John, is that you?" He looked up, and for a split second, there was nothing in his eyes. A blank slate, a complete and utter lack of recognition. It was so total, so absolute, that it threw me. Had I gotten it wrong? Was it just a guy who looked like him? But then, his expression shifted. It was a slow, deliberate change, like a curtain being drawn back. A smile spread across his face, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. They remained distant. "Holy smokes," he said, his voice a familiar, gravelly baritone. "Look what the cat dragged in. Long time, no see." He extended a hand, and I took it, his grip as firm as I remembered. "You're a sight for sore eyes," I said, the relief washing over me. I had been right. "John, man, how long has it been, Laredo?" "Laredo," he repeated, the word sounding hollow, like he was testing it. "Yeah, must be, what, 10 years? Something like that," I said, studying him. The smile was there, the face was right, but something was off. The energy was wrong. The John I knew would have clapped me on the back, launched into some long, convoluted story from the old days. This John was reserved, quiet. He seemed tired, more tired than any man had a right to be. "You still running that international?" I asked, nodding towards his rig. "She looks great. She's a good truck," he said simply, patting the fender. "Never lets me down." He took another sip from his thermos. "You stopping for the night?" "Just a few hours," I said. "Gotta make Denver by Friday." "How about you? What's your run?" He shrugged, a slow, heavy movement. "Oh, you know, east. Always east." He looked past me, towards the highway, his eyes seeming to track the headlights of the passing cars. There was a longing in that look, or maybe it was dread. It was hard to tell. An awkward silence fell between us. The easy camaraderie I remembered was absent, replaced by a stilted, forced politeness. It was like talking to a photograph of John, not the man himself. I chalked it up to the years, to the road wearing him down. It happens to the best of us. The spark just goes out. "Well," I said, clapping him on the shoulder, deciding to break the tension. I was just heading in for a coffee and a bite. "You want to join me? My treat. For old time's sake." He looked at my hand on his shoulder, and for a terrifying instant, I thought he was going to flinch away. But he didn't. He just looked back at me, that same placid, empty smile on his face. "Nah," he said. "I'm all caffee'd out. Just finished my break. I need to get rolling. Miles to burn, you know." Sure, I said, pulling my hand back, feeling strangely rejected. "Of course. Well, it was good seeing you, John. Really good. Take care of yourself out there. You too," he said. He gave me one last nod, then turned, opened the door to his cab, and climbed in without another word. I stood there, watching as he fired up the old International. The engine turned over with a healthy roar, and he gave me a single, brief wave before pulling out of the spot and rumbling towards the exit. I watched his taillights disappear onto the access road, a profound sense of disappointment settling in my gut. The past, it seemed, was a country you could never truly revisit. Shaking off the weirdness of the encounter, I finally made my way into the truck stop. The blast of warm, greasy air was a welcome comfort. The place was a cathedral of the road, filled with the sounds of clattering dishes, hissing espresso machines, and the low murmur of tired conversations. I headed straight for the coffee station, pouring a large black coffee into a styrofoam cup that promised to be extra thick. It was a lie, but it was a comforting lie, I found a booth in the corner of the diner, sliding into the cracked vinyl seat with a sigh. I ordered the patty melt and fries, and when it came, it was as glorious as I remembered. For a while, I just lost myself in the simple, greasy pleasure of the food, washing it down with the bitter coffee. The encounter with John nagged at me, a splinter in my mind. He had just seemed so hollow. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he'd had a rough go of it. The road takes its toll in different ways on different men. After paying the check, I decided to stock up on road snacks for the night drive. I wandered the aisles of the attached convenience store, picking up beef jerky, peanuts, and a few more of those disappointingly thin styrofoam cups. The place was brightly lit, a jarring contrast to the deepening twilight outside. I was in the chip aisle, debating between sour cream and onion or salt and vinegar. When I saw him again, my heart did a little stutter. It was John. He was standing by the coolers, looking at the energy drinks. He must have turned around, come back for something he forgot. A little surge of hope went through me. Maybe we could have that proper talk after all. I started towards him, a smile back on my face. Hey, change your mind. I called out as I got closer. He turned, and the same blank, unrecognizing look from the parking lot was back on his face. But this time, it didn't shift. It stayed. He looked at me as if I were a complete stranger, his eyes scanning me with a polite, impersonal curiosity that sent a chill straight down my spine. I'm sorry, he said, his voice still John's, but the inflection was all wrong. It was lighter, higher, with a faint, unplaceable accent that hadn't been there before. John, I said, my smile faltering. It's me. We just talked outside, by your rig, half an hour ago. He blinked, a slow, deliberate motion. I think you've got me confused with someone else, friend. He offered a small, tight smile. Name's Pete. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Pete. I stared at him, my mind reeling. It was him. It was the same face, the same hair, the same jacket. But the man inside was gone, replaced by this polite stranger. The eyes were the real tell. John's eyes had been a lively, mischievous blue. These eyes were flat, a dull gray blue, like a lake on an overcast day. No, I insisted, my voice rising slightly. No, you're John. We knew each other in Laredo. Your truck, the Green International, it's right outside. Pete shook his head, his expression a mask of mild concern, the kind you'd give a crazy person on the street. I drive a Volvo, white. Just pulled in about 15 minutes ago from Toledo. You must have me mistaken for another driver. He gestured vaguely towards the parking lot. Lots of us look alike after a while. This was beyond mistaken identity. This was something else. A prank, but why? John wasn't a prankster, and this felt cruel, not funny. It felt wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Your voice, I stammered, feeling like I was losing my grip. It's his voice. Pete's smile became strained. Well, I hope you find your friend, buddy. You have a good one now, all right? He didn't wait for a response. He turned, selected a can of Red Bull from the cooler, and walked towards the checkout, leaving me standing there, utterly alone in the middle of the brightly lit chip aisle, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt cold, colder than the Ohio wind had made me. I had just seen a ghost wearing my friend's face. I left the store in a daze, my purchases forgotten. The cold air outside felt different now, sharp and menacing, carrying a bite that had nothing to do with the temperature. I scanned the parking lot, my eyes desperately searching for the Green International. It was gone, of course. In its place, a dozen anonymous rigs sat silently. A white Volvo was parked near the fuel islands. Pete's truck. My mind was a chaotic jumble. Had I imagined the whole first encounter? Was the fatigue finally getting to me, conjuring up ghosts from my past and then twisting them into nightmares? But the memory was so vivid, the feel of his handshake, the sound of his engine, the specific, unsettling emptiness in his eyes. I couldn't have imagined that. I hurried back to my own truck, the sanctuary of my cab, feeling less secure than ever. I locked the doors, the sound of the bolt sliding home unnaturally loud in the silence. I started the engine, not to leave, but for the comfort of its rumble, for the power it represented. I needed to move, to think. I pulled out of the spot and drove to the far end of the lot, parking under a bright sodium vapor light, wanting to be in the open, wanting to see Dot for an hour. I just sat there, watching the comings and goings of other truckers. Normal life. Men stretching, fueling up, heading inside for a shower or a hot meal. The mundane reality of it all made my experience seem even more insane. Who would believe me? I saw my old friend, and then an hour later, he didn't know me and had a different name. It sounded like the ramblings of a man who'd been on the road too long. As night fully descended, I flicked on the CB radio, tuning it to the main channel. The chatter was a lifeline to normality, a buzz of human connection. Talk of speed traps, bad coffee, family back home. I listened, soothed by the familiar rhythms. Then, a voice broke through, laced with a tension that immediately put me on edge. Breaker 19, anybody copy? This is Rolling Thunder, come back. Go ahead, Rolling Thunder, another voice crackled. Yeah, you guys near the Mansfield Petro. You hear about this? They just found a driver, Doa, over at the rest area on eastbound 80, mile marker 175. My blood ran cold. Mile marker 175 was about 20 miles east. I'd passed it just before coming here. Copy that, Rolling Thunder. Geez, what happened? Heart attack? Negative, from what I'm hearing on the scanner. Sounds weird. Cops are all over it. No obvious cause. Driver's name was... Hang on. They said it was a Pete something. Drove a white Volvo. The world stopped. The sounds from the radio faded into a dull roar in my ears. I couldn't breathe. Pete. A white Volvo. The pieces, jagged and horrifying, slammed together in my mind. The man in the store. The polite, concerned stranger who called himself Pete. He was dead. Found at a rest area 20 miles away. At the same time he was supposedly talking to me in a chip aisle. This was no coincidence. This was no prank. This was something other. The thing I had spoken to. The thing wearing John's face. It hadn't just been pretending to be someone else. It had been wearing a dead man's identity. And where was John? The real John. The thought was a vomitous wave of dread. If it was wearing his face, what did that mean for him? The CB chatter continued, speculating, gossiping, but I heard none of it. I was trapped in a nightmare, a cold, gripping terror that had its hooks in me. The familiar landscape of the truck stop, the sounds of the highway, the very air I breathed it had all become alien and threatening. Something was out there, moving among us, slipping into the skins of drivers and discarding them when they were no longer needed. I was no longer just a tired trucker. I was a witness to something I couldn't understand, and the horror was just beginning. Sleep was impossible. Every shadow that moved outside the windshield was a threat. Every sound of a passing truck was the Green International returning for me. I spent the night driving, pushing east through Ohio and into Pennsylvania, the headlights cutting a feeble path through an ocean of darkness. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my body rigid with a tension that no amount of deep breathing could ease. The image of John's face, or the thing that looked like John, was burned onto the back of my eyelids. That flat, empty stare. The polite, alien smile of Pete. And now, Pete was dead. The radio report had been concrete, confirmed by other drivers on the channel. A tragedy, they called it. A mystery. But I knew it was more. I knew it was a symptom of a sickness, a predator on my stretch of highway. The sun rose, a pale, anemic light that did nothing to warm the chill in my bones. I'd driven through the night without stopping, fueled by pure adrenaline and dread. My body was screaming for rest, but the thought of pulling over, of shutting my eyes, was unthinkable. What if I woke up to that face peering in through my window? I finally forced myself to stop at a crowded service plaza in central Pennsylvania. It was bustling with morning traffic, families on road trips, commuters grabbing coffee. The normalcy was a stark, jarring contrast to the terror festering inside me. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, my senses on high alert, scanning every face, every uniform, every reflection in the window. I bought a coffee I didn't want and found a seat at a small table overlooking the parking lot. My rig was visible from here, a familiar anchor in a world that had suddenly become unmoored. I replayed the events of the previous day over and over, searching for a clue, a logical explanation my mind had missed. There was none. Only the impossible, chilling truth. My phone buzzed on the table. It was my dispatcher, Mike. I stared at it, the vibration a jarring intrusion. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't pretend everything was okay. How could I explain that I couldn't finish my run because I was being hunted by a thing that collects faces? He'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I watched the cars come and go, a silent movie of human routine. A minivan filled with kids. A salesman in a sedan, talking on his hands-free. A state trooper cruiser, moving slowly through the lanes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of safety. Then I saw it. Another truck, a Peterbilt, pulling into a spot a few rows over from mine. The driver's door opened, and a man climbed down. He was a big guy, wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap. He stretched, just like I had done yesterday, and then he turned to look towards the building. Towards me. It was John's face. My heart seized in my chest. It was him. The same features, the same red hair sticking out from under the cap. But the posture was different, more slumped, older. The clothes were wrong. And the eyes. Even from this distance, I could see they were just as dead as they had been yesterday. He didn't see me. He just started walking towards the building, his movements slow, deliberate, like a marionette being pulled on strings. He wasn't John. He was wearing John. The real John was gone. And this thing was walking around in his skin, using it until it found another. Until it needed to become a Pete. A fresh, more potent terror washed over me. It wasn't a one-time event. It was ongoing. It was here. It was moving east, just as it had said. Always east. The words echoed in my head, a terrifying mantra. I was frozen in my seat, my coffee cooling forgotten in front of me. I was a mouse trapped in a corner, watching the cat pad silently through the room. The thing wearing John's face disappeared inside the service plaza. My paralysis broke. I had to get out of there. Now. I stood up so fast my chair screeched backwards, drawing a few curious glances. I didn't care. I had to get to my truck. I had to run. I practically ran through the food court, my eyes fixed on the glass doors leading to the parking lot. I burst outside, the cold air a shock, and power walked towards my rig, my keys already clutched in my sweaty hand. I was almost there, just 2 rows away, when a voice called out from behind me. Hey, excuse me, hey, driver. I froze. I knew that voice. It was John's voice. I turned slowly, my body screaming in protest. It was him. The thing. It was standing by the hood of a pickup truck, about 50 feet away. It had changed its clothes. The denim jacket was gone, replaced by a heavy flannel shirt. It was holding a road atlas, folded open. It smiled at me, the same polite, vacant smile Pete had used. Sorry to bother you, it said, its voice dripping with a false, folksy charm. I'm a little turned around. You know how you can get on these back roads. It took a step towards me. I took an involuntary step back, hitting the side of a parked car. The alarm didn't go off, but a silent one was blaring in my head. I don't know the area, I stammered, my voice a dry croak. It kept walking forward, slowly, casually. I'm just trying to find my way to I-78. This map is all Greek to me. It held the atlas out, as if inviting me to look. The smile never wavered. The eyes were the worst part. They were looking at me, but they weren't seeing me. They were assessing me, like a mechanic looking at a used part. This was a test. A game. It knew I knew. It had to. Why else would it approach me, of all the people here? It was toying with me, the way a cat toys with a mouse before the kill. Just follow the signs, I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by a surge of raw, primal fear. You can't miss it. It was only 20 feet away now. I could see the details of John's face, the stubble on his chin, a small scar above his eyebrow I remembered from Laredo. It was a perfect replica, a perfect mask, and underneath, something unspeakable was looking out. You sure? It said, its head tilting to the side. The movement was unnatural, bird-like. You look like a man who knows his way around. You have the look. It took another step. 10 feet. The smell hit me then. A faint, coppery smell, like old pennies and damp soil. The smell of a freshly turned grave. That was it. I broke. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I heard it call out once more, hey friend, you alright? But the voice was already fading, consumed by the roaring in my ears. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so violently I could barely get the door open. I scrambled into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. I didn't look towards the pickup truck. I just started the engine, threw the rig into gear, and peeled out of the parking spot, the tires squealing in protest. I didn't check my mirrors until I was merging back onto the highway, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The service plaza shrank in my rearview mirror. I saw no sign of it, no sign of John, or the thing that wore him, but I knew it was still out there, and it had seen me. It had looked right at me. I drove like all the demons of hell were on my bumper. I didn't stop for fuel, for food, for anything. I pushed my rig and myself to the absolute limit, the landscape blurring into a meaningless streak of gray and brown outside my windows. The fear was a physical thing now, a coppery taste in my mouth, a cold knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. I called my dispatcher. I told him I was sick, something violent, that I had to shut down for a few days. I didn't care about the load, about the money, about my reputation. All that mattered was putting as much distance as I could between me and that thing. I found a random, anonymous motel on the outskirts of a town whose name I forgot as soon as I saw it. I paid in cash, parked my rig around back, and locked myself in the room. For 3 days, I didn't leave. I lived on vending machine snacks and tap water. I slept in fitful bursts, my dreams filled with shifting faces and unblinking, dead eyes. I saw John's face in the patterns on the ceiling, in the grain of the wood on the door. The memory of that coppery, grave dirt smell haunted me. I thought about going to the police. What would I say? Officer, a creature that steals the faces of truckers asked me for directions. They'd lock me up. I thought about telling other drivers on the CB. They'd laugh it off, call me crazy, or worse, they'd believe me, and a panic would spread through the only community I had. I was alone with this knowledge, a terrible, isolating secret that had poisoned the one thing I loved, the road. When I finally emerged, I was a changed man. The world was no longer just a place of miles and destinations. It was a hunting ground. Every truck stop, every rest area, every gas station was a potential stage for its next performance. I started seeing its potential faces everywhere. The driver at the next pump who didn't make eye contact. The man in the diner who ate with a strange, mechanical precision. My own reflection in the mirror began to look unfamiliar, like a mask I was wearing. I finished the run to Denver, but the joy was gone. The hum of the engine was no longer a lullaby. It was the background noise to my paranoia. The open road was no longer a symbol of freedom. It was a vast, exposed place where it could be watching from any passing rig. I still drive. It's all I know how to do. But I'm not the same man. I stick to shorter hauls now. I avoid the big truck stops, the ones in Ohio, Pennsylvania, the ones that said it favored. I never turn on my CB. I don't talk to other drivers. I keep my head down, my doors locked, and I drive. I never found out what happened to the real John. I'm afraid to look. I'm more afraid of what I might find. Sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in and the white lines become hypnotic, I see a green International in my mirrors, or a white Volvo, or a Peterbilt with a driver who wears a familiar, empty face. And I know, with a cold certainty that has settled deep into my soul, that it's still out there. It's always moving east, and it's always hungry for new faces. The open road isn't free anymore. It's just a long, lonely runway for a horror that wears a smile it stole from a friend. And I'm just another driver, waiting to see if it's my turn to be the mask.